Hi, Clara. I was on mute.
Oh, okay. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining. I'm so grateful to see you all here and to have you join.
We're grateful to have you.
Thank you.
Cheryl,
Yes. Hi,
how was
Nancy.
how was the stuffed cabbage?
It wasn't as good as mine. It kind of was like meat. I don't know. Mine is so much better, but you know
Well,
what? I didn't have to cook it, so that was
correct. Correct.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I think we'll start. It's 7:35. I want to first thank you all for.
Okay, I'm going to mute everyone now except for Clara.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Myra. Perfect. So I want to thank you all for being here and for joining this virtual class. I do want to preface by saying I haven't been teaching for a while, so forgive me if I'm a little rusty. And just a little shout out to my aunt right here who's watching. She helped me to come up with some ideas to share with you all today. So just a little thank you there. So we find ourselves now in the time called, in a time where we're counting the Sphira and we're preparing ourselves for Shavuos, which falls out this year on May 29th. And just like the Jews did in the desert, they prepared themselves for receiving the Torah. That's what we do. Each day we count, and each day we focus on another emotional attribute, Sphira, to work on, to refine, and to bring awareness of, to help us to become complete, wholesome people, to receive the Torah in the best way. And so that's why this class was born, how to actualize our truest potential. And while we're not going to focus and explore each Sephira and focus on that, everything is obviously connected, and we will touch up upon some emotions here and there. So this class is based on Hasidic thought, right? And we've all heard of Chabad, we've all heard of Hasidus, but what actually is Hasidus? What, you know, the Hasidus was introduced to the world in the early 1700s. There had been a lot of Torah study and Torah scholars and very wise rabbis all throughout the time since the giving of the Torah. So what's this Hasidus bringing? What's this new thing that Hasidus is bringing to the Jewish world? And the Baal Shem Tov began Hasidus, again in the early 1700s, and he said this path, these teachings of Hasidus, its purpose is to bring understanding to the Torah that we know, to bring understanding about Hashem, to bring understanding how Hashem creates the world, bring understanding of who we are. And what does understanding lead to? Understanding leads to appreciation, right? A child has no understanding what goes into creating a beautiful, intricate, ceramic, handmade, hand-painted vase. A child will have absolutely no appreciation of this masterpiece and will have no problem just knocking it over into thousands of pieces. Now, me, for example, I'm not a big art person. I don't know much, but from the price tag and from the details and from looking at it, I can see, wow, a lot of talent must have gotten into creating this beautiful vase. You know, look at the details here and there. And so I have a bigger appreciation than the child of, wow, this is a beautiful masterpiece. But a beautiful masterpiece. But an artist who has studied pottery and ceramic making and hand painting will have an even deeper appreciation of what this vase is and how valuable it is and how unbelievable of a masterpiece it is. So this is true with Hasidus and the world. When we can learn and understand deeper parts of the world make up, how God interacts with the world, how we are created, and what we are like according to Hasidus, then we can create a deeper appreciation for the life we living, who we are, and what God does for us. And when you have an appreciation for someone or something, doing something for them or doing something that makes them happy is done with joy. When you appreciate a friend in your life, it's a joy to do anything that's connected with them. And that's what Hasidus is trying to achieve, bringing joy back into serving Hashem, into interacting with the world. And during the time of the Baal Shem Tov, there weren't any recorders, so there is a lot of information that we don't really know what he introduced, but we know what he taught by his students and what they taught to their students, and it was passed down. So there are quite a few different paths. The Arizal lived in a similar time of the Baal Shem Tov, so we have heard of the Zohar, Secrets of the Kabbalah, but the path that we are going to discuss today is the path that the Baal HaTanya established. He learned all the Hasidus. He was a student of the Baal Shem Tov, and in the late 1700s, he founded his movement and his perspective, which is based on the power of our minds. Our minds is something that distinguishes us from all other creations, all animals, plants, and inanimate objects. And this tool that we have as human beings, this power of the mind, is what he based his movement on, and he called it Chabad. So Chabad, nowadays you ask Chabad, thank God, I think most people have heard of what Chabad is, but Chabad is not just when you are on touring somewhere and you need some kosher food and call Chabad, or you get stuck in an airport and you need some help, call Chabad. Chabad is more than that. Yes, there are so many teachings of Chabad, but today we're going to explore the foundation of what Chabad is founded on. And this is the power of the mind. In fact, Chabad stands for the three powers of our minds: Chachma, Bina, and Da'as. Right? It's an acronym. Chet, Beis, and Daled. So what is Chachma? This is the first power and stage of the mind. It translates as wisdom, but it is that fleeting thought that you have in your mind of, I really should stop this bad habit. I really should stop smoking. Or I really should show my friend how much I appreciate her. And the next level is Bina, which translates as understanding. And this level, this power of our minds, is the power to delve into that fleeting thought. Why is smoking bad for me? Why do I feel I just need to smoke? What are methods that I can explore to stop this thing? I agree it's not beneficial for my life. So of course, this category can be endless in a certain sense. And this category is also exploring, what does my friend like? What can I get her that will properly show that I appreciate her? And then the last step is Das, which translates as knowledge, but it's implementation. True knowledge is implementing what you know, right? You can know something very well, but if you don't implement it by sharing it with somebody or doing anything about it, it's not very beneficial. So implementation is the most important step, and implementation would be to set guidelines and limits to help yourself quit smoking or any bad habit. And implementation would be driving to the store and picking up some flowers because your friend loves that and dropping it off at her house. All these three steps, these three powers of the mind, are vital in creating any change or any concrete result. And it's interesting to note that very often we get stuck and we think, I've been saying I should exercise and I should eat healthy. every day for the past 5 years, why am I not suddenly exercising or eating healthy? And because now we have an awareness that there's 3 steps to creating any change or any real outcome. And we get stuck in that fleeting thought, and or sometimes we get stuck in digging into, I know it's bad for me. Look, it gives me this issue, that issue. I know if I exercise, I could be more, could be healthier, and etc. But we have trouble with that implementation. And yes, implementation is extremely difficult. That I would say personally, that is the hardest step. I know I'm trying to cut down on eating junk food, yet I still buy the junk food, right? Implementation would be I would actually stop buying it. So I got to work on that as well. And actually just recently finished reading a great book. Here it is, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Not sponsored at all, but it's really a great book if you, like me, has a little trouble with that implementation aspect in creating change. And it's really great. It brings down easy ways to implement any change that you want to do. And change that we're talking about using these 3 steps aren't only change for creating good habits or stopping bad habits, things that are external of us, but these 3 powers and stages are also vital in creating inner change. Sometimes we have an incorrect belief about ourselves or about somebody near us or about the world that needs changing. And these 3 steps are the way to accomplish that change. And of course, change is difficult and uncomfortable. And we will explore, I believe, next class on why it's uncomfortable. But that's really the founding point that Hasidus is based on, Chabad, power of the mind, and utilizing these 3 powers to live a successful, meaningful life. And there are a lot of teachings of Hasidus, but this is very much the foundation, hence it's actually called Chabad. So we're going to start with the first thing in the description line, mindfulness. So mindfulness originated, I couldn't figure out what year, but it originated in the Buddhist culture back in India. And mindfulness practices are being present in the moment, being aware of what you're feeling, being aware of yourself in the moment, and therefore you're less prone to experience stress because you're working with the present. And if something's bothering you in the present, you're working with it and you're not denying it. And there are so many mindfulness practices that mental health professionals are really nowadays recommending to anybody who is suffering anxiety, depression, or any stress-related behaviors or feelings to help them reach a state of tranquility and calmness, right? Because we live in a world that everywhere you look, there's just things jumping out at you. I know on my phone, I'm always getting a text, an email, and I've recently shut off almost all my notifications because it's too much. I already have my kids going, mommy, I want this, I want that. The last thing I need is more from my cell phone. But even when we drive in the street, there's billboards and advertisements and just so much busyness going on, even before we look at our crazy schedules with this and that. And there's just a lot of things going on, a lot of stimulation in our world now. And all these really don't attribute to a relaxed state, a relaxed lifestyle. So if ever, now is really a great time to focus on mindful practices. And the Chassam Sofer, who was a great author and scholar in the mid 1800s, and he was once interviewed and asked, what made you successful in being a Torah scholar? How did you do it? And he responded that I did it. I became a great Torah scholar in 5 minutes. What does that mean? How can you achieve something like that in 5 minutes? And he said, all the 5 minutes, you know, all those 5 minutes that go to waste in a person's life, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, I utilized each of those 5 minutes, and that's what I give credit to, those 5 minutes, because all those added up to becoming who I am. So that shows a real amount of being present in each moment to really maximize our potential. And of course, something like that may be extremely difficult to achieve, but that awareness, that mindfulness really is the key to success, and tranquility and being present is so important. And Hasidus, before these mindfulness practices came to America, it came to America around the 1970s, Hasidus has a similar approach of mindfulness, and Hasidus believes this is being full of mind is the recipe for success, and it's called Moyach Shalit al Halev. Your mind rules over your heart. There's a story of a man, Reb Moshe Meisels of Vilna, and he lived around the time of the Baal HaTanya, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he was fluent in 4 languages, and therefore, because in French, Polish, German, and Russian, and because of that, the Rebbe Shneir Zalman of Liadi asked him to be a spy for the Russians. It's a whole nother discussion of why the Baal HaTanya wanted the Tsar, the Russian Tsar, to win the war against Napoleon. We're not going to go there, but Reb Moshe, of course, who was a follower of the Baal HaTanya, went and he joined the Russian army as a translator. Not the Russian army, he joined the French army, as a translator. So the night before, the French planned a huge attack on the Russians. Reb Moshe was there in the tents with all the other generals poring over a map, when suddenly Napoleon barged in. And of course, everyone was a bit shocked. Napoleon doesn't do that. And he came in and he pointed to Reb Moshe and he said, "You are a spy." And he went over and he took his hand and he touched Reb Moshe's heart. Because when you're being accused of something as drastic as that, and especially if it's true, your heart, because starts beating very fast. You get extremely stressed out. And Napoleon was feeling to see if Reb Moshe's heart would give him away and would tell the truth. And Reb Moshe, who was a chassid he was a follower of the Baal HaTanya, the Alter Rebbe, Reb Shneir Zalman, he had been working on this concept of Mayach Shalit al Alev, that his mind should rule over his heart. And so he said, this idea, this principle saved my life, because he was able to control the stress releases in his body. So his heart was completely still. It didn't give him away. And of course, Napoleon said, "Oh, sorry about that." So of course, this is Mayach Shalit al Alev, the mind controlling the heart to the nth degree. I'm sure it'd take a long time to work on for that to become achievable, but our mind controlling our heart is something that we all can practice to do and achieve. In fact, the mind is compared to water. Water is tranquil, it's calm, it's consistent, it's clear. And the heart, the emotions, are compared to fire. Just like a fire flares up and flares down, emotions are like that as well. One moment we'll feel angry, next moment we won't. And what do we know about when you have a fire? What do the fire trucks bring? Water. Whenever there's a fire, we got to bring our water in. When our emotions are acting up, we got to bring our minds in to assess what's going on, what's happening, and therefore have our minds be in control of our emotions. Because I'm sure someone has experienced before that being on the receiving end of somebody who is having an emotional outburst or speaking from an emotional place, you know, whether it's an insult that you know they didn't mean, but it was still hurtful, or in any situation, having our mind be in control of our emotions to properly assess the reality is also, as we said, a mindfulness practice where we are present in the moment and being true to ourselves. And this is all necessary to achieve a tranquil state, which is reflective of our minds, and a calm environment. And I actually was doing some research to, while I was doing some research to find some more information on the Torah and mindfulness, I came across a site called Applied. And it's a site with a lot of published essays on Chassidus. And I actually discovered that my sister had submitted an essay that I didn't know about. So I was glad for this lesson to have discovered that. And she didn't realize it was there as well. And she spoke about procrastination and Chassidus in her essay, and how it connected to our class a little bit is that very often being overwhelmed can lead to procrastination or, other negative behaviors. So when we are present and controlling our being overwhelmed, we can reach a centered place and not have to procrastinate. So another essay, though, that I found on that site is pertaining very much to our class, and it's a beautiful little anecdote about mindfulness. And it says that when Hashem created the world at the beginning, in Bereshis, it says that the earth and the heavens were completed, and then God completed on the seventh day, implying that there was something lacking from creation that God had to finish on the seventh day. So what is that? What was lacking? God created the whole world. And the answer is menucha. Menucha was lacking. And what is menucha? It's actually mentioned all throughout the Shabbat prayers. Menucha translates as rest, serenity, peace. And menucha type of peace is different to shalom, peace. Menucha is a pleasurable peace. It's a serenity. It's a tranquil energy. And this is what Shabbos brought into the world. Shabbos is a day where we stop working. We stop that activity. And Shabbos has that energy of menucha, of rest. And if we tap into any moment of Shabbos, we have the power, because of our souls, to tap into that power of menucha, that tranquil state that Shabbat brings into the world. And that's a great way to tap into that and bring that into our week. As we begin again after Shabbat, we begin the new week. That's a great way to bring in that power of tranquility. And after all, we all want to have tranquility in our lives and stress-free. And of course, it's not an easy, just tap into it and that's it, you're done. But again, all these things really help us to come to that level of working on ourselves to achieve that tranquil state that mindfulness claims. And so we've very much see that moyach shalit al halev, the mind ruling over our heart, and is very much parallel to mindfulness practices we see today. Assessing, why do I feel angry, and what then can I do about it? Why am I overwhelmed, and why am I not able to achieve this? What's blocking me? Being present in the moment and aware of ourselves. And so we see that very much. Now, another point which really leads to our being able to change is when our emotions are in control, when we're feeling overwhelmed, upset, anxious, or angry, we cannot grow. We can't change at those times. we need to reach a state of being whole, of being totally mind, tranquil and calm, in order to achieve a state of being able to change and grow and being aware. So it's really vital to have our mind in control, and the type of, I want to clarify that the mind being in control is not really it's not really a control thing. It's more of an awareness that our minds are our power. Our minds are what distinguish us from every other creation, and therefore using our minds to, I didn't research it, but I think Einstein, you could correct me if I'm wrong, says that we use such a little percentage of our mind's ability in our lives. Our mind has a huge ability, and the more we tap into that, we can really achieve success. So it's so important to remember that. And we did also touch upon at the beginning, when we discussed these three powers of the mind, we touched upon how all three stages of fleeting thought, delving into and understanding those ideas, and then implementation, all those three steps are necessary to create any change. So even just that awareness really helps to accomplish certain change, and realize, oh, right, I've only ever left that habit in a fleeting thought type of level. Let me bring it deeper and further to see if I can actually accomplish that change. And there's, in Parshas Noach, it talks about how Hashem sent the big waters, the flood, to destroy the world. And it says that God needed to destroy the world because the people were so wicked. And Noach, right, tried to convince them and to plead with them, please become better people. God is going to destroy the world. But it didn't help. They didn't change. And the reality is that before the flood, the people were not able to change from within. They were only able to change externally. Noah kept trying to externally change them, because that was the only way that change was able to happen before the plague. And we all know that real change can only come from within, right? There's that anecdote about the chicken who rolls in the mud, and the farmer tries to pat it and wipe it and this and that, trying to get the chicken clean. And yes, some dirt falls off, but the chicken is still dirty. And then suddenly the chicken gives a little shake and all the dust flies away, even all the little ones between his feathers. So change is really something that can only happen from within. But at the time before the flood, that wasn't possible. And therefore Hashem had to send the great water, which we said is mind energy and mind powers, and specifically also through Noach, from the word menucha, tranquil and serenity. And God sent this huge flood of water to refresh the entire world. And after the world getting a huge dose of water, of mind, and specifically through Noach, the world was now able to experience change from within. The world now, after the flood, could change from within. And that's why Hashem's promised that he will never need to send another flood again, because God now has faith in us. We have the ability to change, and we will change. We will become the best people that we can believe. So it's powerful to see that every person, no matter if sometimes we think, oh, they will never change. And of course, our input often won't make them change, but everybody does have that ability inside them to change. And so we spoke about how our mind controlling our body is really necessary to achieve change, is really necessary to achieve tranquility and peacefulness and mindfulness. But what about our emotions? What does the Torah say about our emotions? Are they bad? Do we need to pretend they don't exist and just be mind type of people? What's the Torah's view on that? And before I continue, though, I want to know if anybody has any questions. Everyone's good? Okay, great. Great to see you all. Thank you again for tuning in. So what's the Torah's view on our emotions? So definitely the Torah is in extreme support of experiencing and expressing emotions. Emotions and nothing should ever be thrown under the rug and ignored and suppressed. In fact, psychology is very much, and Torah agrees, that suppressing emotions, suppressing your feelings only leads to future, either resentment or future not such good situations. So it's always important to, yes, express emotions, but always in that realm of appropriate, right? I'm sure you've all heard of the difference between responding versus reacting. I've read it in a few parenting books, how when you're reacting, you're speaking from your emotions, and that can sometimes be hurtful and not what you actually intend, because it's coming from a place where you're frustrated, you're angry. And respond is you have put it through your mind. There's been a filter, and you can see the situation for what it is from a logical, objective place. And that's the way to express your emotions. It's through having that filter to see how is this being going to be taken, and therefore express what's on your heart. Yes, and we see that everything has good elements and bad elements. Some emotions are good, some emotions are bad. Yet all of them need to be expressed through our minds. When we look at kindness, somebody who is unfortunately suffering from a drug addiction, and he comes to you asking you for money, and you have a kind heart and you want to be kind to him, but it's not kindness if you're going to give him money that he's going to use to get even lower and get further into his troubles. That's not true kindness. So there needs to be a filter sometimes with kindness as well, and figure out a way with your mind of, how do I help this person in a way that's not going to be detrimental to his growth and to his life. So every area in a person's life needs to go through that mind filter and needs to be assessed how to appropriately react to any situation. And again, just like emotions can have positive and negative elements to them, our minds as well have that negative and positive to it. Very often, we sometimes get stuck in a negative thought pattern and negative way of looking at things. And we have to have that courage that if that perspective is not bringing us to that tranquil and calm and stress-free, joyous environment in ourselves, we have to challenge that and use our bina, our understanding, and delving into and using that power of our minds to really delve into and create that change and to create that perspective shift in our lives. And it's really the time of the Sephirah, as we mentioned at the beginning, is really an appropriate time to specifically have our mind be in control of our heart, of our emotions, because the Sephirah, each day we discuss another emotion: kindness, severity, compassion, or beauty, and so on. So it's really an appropriate time to have our minds be there to guide our lives. And I'm going to open the floor up for any questions, because that concludes our mind and heart class. And yes, thank you so much for tuning in. Does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to share that they've seen, you know, positive achievements when using our minds in control of our hearts? I'd love to hear your feedback. You know, if anyone experienced similar things, we can encourage each other. I think
yeah, Clara, I could say, I mean, I know I'm sitting in a dark room, but you know, you're making me definitely think. I don't really have any examples right now, but you're definitely making me think about that. And when you, yeah, because we all, or many of us, react without thinking. And I got to take a deep breath or count to 3, and then respond. I'm much better off. So that's, you know, what I got from that. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It's definitely, I know the way I talk, it makes it sound like it's so easy. Anyone can do it. Anyone can do it if you have a mind, which thank God we all do. You can do it, but it's definitely not easy, and it's very often a long work. But again, the more we practice, doesn't make perfect, but practice makes easier, and that's definitely,
yes,
you know, something worth trying to achieve. But thank you, Stacey, for sharing that.
Sure, thank you.
Right. So Adi mentioned in the chat box that she's seen change in her perspective when she's using and she's exploring her true self, which, yes, when you utilize your mind, you're able to explore deeply into yourself and discover really how great you are. And everyone has a soul, and we'll discuss that further next class. But thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So if nobody has any questions, I'll say goodbye. And I'm so happy that you all joined. And I actually want to confirm, is 7:30 a good time for all? Yeah?
For me, it's hard.
What?
For me, it's a little hard, 7:30.
Oh, okay. Anybody else? Would 7 be easier?
Yeah, earlier is easier.
Yeah? Yeah, Cheryl, I think Cheryl agrees.
Try it.
Okay, so we're happy to change it from 7. From 7, yes.
Thank you, Clara.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in.
Bye,
all the best. Take care.
So much.
Have a good night.
Of course. Good night.
So,
Thank you.
you know, and
Great.
dried fruits
Thank you, Nancy.
and stuff are
Thank
very
you.
important, because you know we need the vitamins.
Take care. Thank you.
I know. Bye.